Will the EPA give its okay to higher ethanol blends in gasoline? That is a decision that Administrator Lisa Jackson will be making sometime later this year. And while the ethanol industry is in desperate need of a boost, there could be costs to drivers along with everyone else who depends on corn. Clean Skies Dan Goldstein is here with a closer look at this. Dan?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Tyler. You probably don't even notice it when you fill up your tank with gasoline that it's no longer all gasoline. In fact, it's up to 10% ethanol. It's all made from corn from the U.S. heartland. Now, the U.S. currently blends about 14 billion gallons of ethanol. Now, while the ethanol industry today wants to increase that blend to up to 15%, even up to 85%, and the ethanol industry is hurting bad right now, and they say they need the boost right now.
The U.S. ethanol industry is hurting. More than one-third of its plants are idle as corn prices have fallen and gasoline demand has dropped during the current recession. But the industry says it has a way out. Let the EPA raise the blend limit for ethanol in gasoline to 15%, up from the current 10%.
Because we're capped at E10. So it's really a choice for the nation. This is big business. It's $66 billion, 500,000 jobs in ethanol today. It could be 600,000, 700,000 jobs. It could be $100 billion. It could replace a significant amount of the oil that we're importing.
General Wesley Clark heads the ethanol industry trade group, Growth Energy. He says Wall Street won't lend money to the ethanol industry without a new market. That's why they say they need more help from Washington. They also want more flex fuel vehicles on the road, which can use E85. That's fuel made from 85% ethanol, 15% gasoline. And right now, corn is so inexpensive, it's cheaper to make fuel from corn than crude oil.
All that takes investment dollars, and all of that takes, Wall Street has to see that there's a future beyond E10 for this industry. So it's really up to the government.
But the ethanol industry is fighting manufacturers of boat engines, power tools, and recreational sports equipment like ATVs and jet skis. They worry that the increased corrosiveness of higher ethanol blends might harm their products. And while the EPA acknowledges the ethanol industry is hurting, it still has doubts about whether E15 and E85 will work.
While the clock ticks, our ethanol industry could be lost in the current recession. I've promised them that we'll act as quickly as we can, but that we have to get the data to show whether or not these increased blends have a harmful impact on engines, because it doesn't help to increase the blend rate and then have Americans say, but you gave me gasoline that's not good, because that's going to do more to hurt ethanol in the long term than it will to help it.
Clark says the increased use of ethanol will be safe and it will help boost the economy.
We've seen all the results of testing. We know they've done a lot of private testing on their own. We're very confident we can go from E10 to E15 and help the American public with lower prices on gasoline and less dependence on imported fuel. And that's a national security issue, a jobs issue, and an issue involving protecting our environment.
But not all environmentalists agree. They worry that increasing the blending cap will only increase food prices again. Last year, crude prices soared and the industry blended record amounts of ethanol to meet demand.
And as we expand to 15%, if that is what the administration decides to do, of course we're going to be tightening up our food to fuel balance even more, making us more vulnerable, and countries around the world, particularly poor people around the world, more vulnerable to sudden price run-ups.
The ethanol industry says that won't happen, pointing to studies that show corn prices might just rise 0.2% if E15 is approved. The EPA has until December to make a decision on E15, and the ethanol industry will just have to wait to see if those acres of corn remain just field of dreams.
Now, Tyler, that study came from the University of Missouri. Just a couple notes here. There are about 8 million flex-fueled vehicles on the road, and that may sound like a lot, but there are more than 250 million registered vehicles in the United States. Tyler?
One factor here, Dan, we haven't talked about yet is the loss in fuel efficiency when you go with a higher ethanol blend. That certainly has to be a factor here, correct?
Yes, it does, and that's one of the things that certainly is kind of one of the balancing issues. The EPA says that if you fill your car with E85, you'll get about 25 to 30% less fuel economy than you would with gasoline. It's just because the fuel has a little less energy, just a little less pop in it than than gasoline, but they're wondering if consumers are willing to make the trade-off, considering the prices of ethanol, as you saw in that piece, was almost 50 cents less than regular gasoline.
Dan Goldstein back from his recent trip to South Dakota to get a closer look at the ethanol industry. Dan, thanks a lot.
You bet.